Hey folks, look at what I have here. I have this beautiful salmon, and tonight we're going to can it. My husband caught this salmon. We also had a smaller one that we ate, and quite frankly, it's salmon season. We get a little bit tired of eating salmon. I know there's people in parts of the country that couldn't believe that, but it's true. But anyway, this one, I want to go ahead and can it. I've got some in my freezer, and I want to start putting away some in jars. And so I'm going to can this one. And it's actually really easy. It's very similar to tuna. There's not a whole lot of work involved. But I will tell you, this recipe that I'm using is from the National Center for Home Food Preservation Complete Guide to Home Canning. And that's the one I like to use for things like this, but it's also the one that you can download, so you can have this recipe pretty easily. So anyway, the recipe for fish in pint jars, I'm going to use pint jars, is for bluefish, mackerel, salmon, steelhead, trout, and any other fatty fish except tuna. Tuna is kind of its own little thing. And it talks about preparing the fish. Obviously this one has already been bled, and you need to bleed and eviscerate the fish immediately after catching, and you never wait more than 2 hours after they're caught to do that. And you keep them on ice or in the refrigerator until you're ready to can them. And just a note, sometimes in home canned salmon you can get these little crystals. It's called struvite or magnesium ammonium phosphate, and that will sometimes form in home canned salmon. You can't avoid it, and it usually goes away when the fish is heated, and it's safe to eat, so don't worry if you see that in there. So anyway, the way you do this is we're going to split this fish lengthwise. First I'm going to cut fillets. I'm just going to cut it that way, and I'm going to cut it about so that they will fit in a jar. So I'm going to use this jar and kind of measure the fillets so that there's a nice generous inch at the top, and then cut it down so you just have the two sides of the fish. And then with salmon you don't have to remove the skin. I am not a fish skin fan, so what I do is I'm not going to remove this skin before I can it, but when you take it out after it's been canned, it's really easy just to pull the skin out of there. You want to leave the skin on when you can it though, because there's a lot of really good oils and nutrition in the skin that will be, wasted if you don't put it in the jar. Another tip is that in salmon there are these little, here's one, little tiny bones. You can see that little bone right there? Well, you don't even have to remove those, because the heat and pressure from the pressure canning, some of these little tiny ones will actually just dissolve. The other ones become soft enough that you probably won't even notice they're in there, and you can chew them, and they're actually a good source of calcium. So you can leave the bones in. So this is not hard at all. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first of all start by cutting this section, because I don't know if you can see how this kind of curves out where the head was. So I'm going to cut that straight, and then I'm going to cut the sections down, and I'm going to cut to about here. And the reason is I'll cut the tail off and I'll just keep that piece, and that piece I will use to make fish stock. I've got a couple more of those in the freezer. So I will come back to you when I have these pieces all cut. Well, I forgot to turn my camera on when I started packing jars, but I've got 2 jars already packed, and I wanted to show you that when you do salmon, you pack it with the skin side out. And you don't have to, but they say it's for a better appearance. I don't know why, but anyway, I'm going to. So on this one, I took the fillet. You kind of take the little fillets and you kind of roll them in on each other as best you can, and then like that, you pop it down in the jar. And you might have little pockets like that, and that's what I use. Sometimes there will be little bits that you cut off of other pieces to go in jars, so I'm just going to pack that down in that air pocket part and get those air pockets filled so it looks lovely. And oh, here's also a little tip I should show you. I always wear gloves because I don't like the way fish makes my hands smell, but also if you just use a ring when you're using something really oily like salmon or tuna, put it around the top, and when you pack the food in there, it kind of keeps there from getting that much oil on there. And you might not think that's a big deal, but when that oil sets while you're doing the rest of the jars, it really gets kind of sticky and it's hard to clean off. So anyway, I'm just going to run this down the side and try to make sure we get all the air pockets out of the bottom. That's really the part you're going to get air pocket in, and get that packed down in there nice and tightly. And that is a pretty good looking jar of salmon. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, and I wanted to tell you too, when you are working with raw salmon and you have a dog, do not let your dog eat raw salmon. It is really, really very bad for them. It can make them very sick. And you don't ever want to make your dog sick. So I'm going to roll that in on itself. I might have to slice that one little bit off. Oops, forgot my ring. See if I can put this in there. This one's a little bit thicker, but we'll see. Kind of pack it in there nice and tight. Just kind of force it down in there. You hear the air coming out. And then you get one nice piece. Look at that. That worked out lovely. Take the ring off. Get my little packer tool. Kind of push that down and push it in and squeeze down, and it kind of lets some of the air come out of the bottom. So I'm pretty excited about having this salmon in the fridge. I got 8-pint jars, and I think I'm going to have just enough to do them. So I'm going to finish packing my jars, and I'll be back to you when we're done. So there I ended up with 8-pint jars of salmon, and because this is fish, just like with tuna, when I wipe the rim of the jars, I'm going to do that with some vinegar, because the vinegar helps cut the oil. And also, when you're cleaning a fish, getting ready to can it, you can put it, wash it with some water in the sink, and you can put a little bit of vinegar in the water, and it kind of helps get rid of that fishy slime that kind of just makes it nicer, easier to work with. So I'm going to really give it a good rub with that vinegar. And I also put vinegar in the water of my pressure canner so that it helps with the odor. And what time is it? It's like 8:30 at night, and this goes on for 100 minutes. Oops. Oh, I'm going to have to wash that one now. I can't find my really good green one of these little holders, so I'm having to be very careful not to touch the underside of these lids. I'll put one of these on here, and I'm going to have to wash that lid and start over with that one since it touched the counter. And I'll put my little tool on there. If you don't have one of these tools, you just do this to fingertip tight. So that looks pretty cool. So I'm going to wash that lid, get it back going, and then I'll wipe all these, and I'll bring you back when I've got them in the canner. Alrighty, there's 8 pints of salmon in my pressure canner. I will put the lid on. I will let it start to vent, and once the steam has vented for 10 minutes, I will put the weight on, and when it comes to pressure, which at my altitude is 10 pounds of pressure for a weight, 11 pounds for the dial, I will process that once it comes to pressure for 100 minutes, and I'll bring you back when we're done. Okay, the 100 minutes is up. And then I let the pressure come to 0 and let it set for a couple minutes, and then I opened it and I've let it set for 10 minutes. And now I'm taking the salmon out. You can see the salmon in there, and you can see still boiling. And the amount of liquid that is created by the salmon, just like tuna. There's a whole bunch of liquid in there, and that's why you don't have to add any. So this turned out pretty nice. That was real silver. We'll get them all set out, and then I'll show you. Didn't smell at all while it was cooking, or while it was canning, but then as soon as we opened it, it smells not nearly like tuna. Tuna's really, really, really smells the house up. This isn't too bad. But there we have it. 8 jars of wild caught home canned tuna. I'm going to show you that. There, you can still see the liquid bubbling in there. Super good stuff. So if you ever get a chance to can your salmon, do it. Thanks for watching.